Captain James Carter of the United Earth Fleet had been dispatched to the remote planet of Cleria on a routine reconnaissance mission. The planet was known for its harsh environment and the reclusive, authoritarian regime led by the infamous tyrant Lord Varlin. As his ship entered Cleria's atmosphere, James intercepted a faint distress signal coming from deep within the planet's barren wastelands. Following the signal, James landed his ship near a foreboding fortress that stood in stark contrast to the desolate surroundings. With his pulse rifle at the ready, he cautiously approached the massive structure. The fortress's imposing walls and spiked towers gave it an almost impregnable appearance, but the distress signal urged him forward. Inside, James navigated the dimly lit corridors, guided by the persistent signal. His instincts told him to stay alert, and he soon understood why. The fortress was filled with guards, and their stern expressions and heavily armed presence suggested that they were protecting something, or someone, of great importance. James's path eventually led him to a large, ornate chamber. At its center stood a young woman with luminous blue skin and striking violet eyes, chained to a stone pillar. Her red hair cascaded down her shoulders, and her ethereal beauty was marred by the bruises and cuts that marked her skin. She looked up as James entered, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling but defiant. "I'm Captain James Carter of the United Earth Fleet," he replied, his voice steady. "I received your distress signal. I'm here to help." The woman's eyes widened in relief. "Please, you must get me out of here. My name is Celine. My father, Tyrant Lord Varlin, has kept me prisoner here for years. I can't endure it any longer." James moved quickly to her side, using his laser cutter to break the chains that bound her. "We need to move fast," he said. "Can you walk?" Celine nodded, though her movements were unsteady. "Yes, but we must be careful. My father's guards are everywhere." With Celine leaning on him for support, James led the way back through the labyrinthine corridors of the fortress. They encountered several guards along the way, but James's training and quick reflexes allowed them to dispatch their enemies silently and efficiently. As they neared the exit, alarms suddenly blared throughout the fortress. Their escape had been discovered. James and Celine broke into a run, dodging the guards who now swarmed the corridors. "We're almost there," James shouted over the din. Finally, they burst out of the fortress and into the open air. James's ship was just ahead, its engines idling. They sprinted toward it, but a group of guards blocked their path, weapons drawn. James raised his pulse rifle, prepared to fight. "Stay behind me," he told Celine. But before the guards could attack, Celine raised her hand, and a wave of energy surged from her palm, knocking the guards to the ground. James looked at her in astonishment. "I didn't know you could do that," he said, impressed. "There's a lot you don't know about me," Celine replied, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. They boarded the ship, and James quickly took the controls. As they ascended into the sky, the fortress receded into the distance. Celine looked out the viewport, her expression a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Thank you," she said softly, "for saving me." James met her gaze, his eyes filled with determination. "You're safe now, Celine, and I promise, I'll help you find a new life, far away from your father's tyranny." As James's ship soared through the atmosphere, he set a course for the nearest star system where they could lay low and plan their next steps. Celine, still shaken from their harrowing escape, sat quietly in the co-pilot seat, her eyes fixed on the stars beyond the viewport. "Are you all right?" James asked, glancing over at her. Celine nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "It's just, I never thought I'd be free of him. My father is a monster. He used me as a tool, a pawn in his schemes. And now, even though I'm free, I can't help but feel like he's still out there, watching." James reached out and gently took her hand. "You don't have to worry about him anymore. We'll find a way to keep you safe. I promise." Just then, the ship's sensors beeped, indicating multiple incoming vessels. James checked the readouts and his heart sank. "Varlin's forces," he muttered. "They're already on our tail." Celine's face paled. "We have to outrun them." James tightened his grip on the controls. "Hold on." He pushed the ship to its limits, weaving through asteroid fields and utilizing every evasive maneuver he knew. The enemy ships pursued them relentlessly, firing plasma bolts that narrowly missed their hull. James's skillful piloting kept them one step ahead, But it was clear that they couldn't keep this up forever. "We need to find a place to hide," Celine said urgently. "There's a nebula nearby. Its energy readings will mask our presence." James altered their course and dove into the dense, swirling gases of the nebula. The ship's sensors flickered, and their pursuers' signals disappeared from the radar. They had lost them, at least for the moment. Breathing a sigh of relief, James slowed the ship to a safer speed. "That should buy us some time, but we can't stay here indefinitely." Celine nodded. "There's a resistance group on the planet Zorath. They've been fighting against my father's regime for years. If we can reach them, they might be able to help us." "Zorath it is then," James said, setting the new course. "But first, we need to make sure we're not being followed." Over the next few hours, they navigated through the nebula, periodically checking for any signs of pursuit. As they drifted in the relative safety of the swirling gases, Celine shared more about her life under Varlin's rule. "My father is a tyrant," she explained. "He enslaved his own people, using fear and violence to maintain control. I was a symbol of his power, kept hidden away and used to manipulate those who opposed him." James listened, his anger growing at the thought of the suffering she had endured. "We'll put an end to his reign," he vowed. "But first, we need to get you to safety." As they emerged from the nebula, James and Selena breathed a collective sigh of relief. The sensors remained clear, indicating that they had successfully evaded their pursuers. With a new destination in mind, James set a course for Zorath, hoping that the resistance there would provide the support they needed. During the journey, James and Celine grew closer. They shared stories of their pasts, their hopes, and their fears. Despite the darkness that had brought them together, they found solace in each other's presence. One night, as they sat together in the ship's lounge, Celine looked at James with gratitude in her eyes. "I don't know how I can ever repay you for what you've done." James smiled warmly. "You don't have to repay me, Celine. We're in this together. We'll fight for a better future side by side." Celine's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Thank you, James, for everything." As they approached Zorath, they knew that their journey was far from over. But with each other's support, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would fight for freedom, justice, and a new beginning. As James and Celine neared Zorath, they transmitted a secure message to the planet's surface, hoping to establish contact with the resistance. The response came swiftly, directing them to a hidden landing site deep within the planet's dense forests. The lush greenery and towering trees of Zorath were a stark contrast to the barren wastelands of Cleria, offering a sense of hope and renewal. Upon landing, they were met by a group of heavily armed resistance fighters. Their leader, a formidable woman named Talia, approached with cautious curiosity. Her sharp eyes assessed James and Celine, weighing the truth of their story. "You must be Captain James Carter and Celine," Talia said, her voice steady and commanding. "We received your message. What brings you to Zorath?" James stepped forward, his expression serious. "We've come seeking your help. Celine is the daughter of Tyrant Lord Varlon, but she has escaped his tyranny and wants to help bring him down. We need your support." Talia's eyes narrowed as she turned her gaze to Celine. "And why should we trust you? Your father is responsible for countless atrocities. How do we know you're not here to deceive us?" Celine met Talia's gaze with unwavering determination. "I understand your skepticism, but I'm here to make amends for my father's actions. I've seen the suffering he's caused, and I want to help end it. I believe that with your help we can bring about real change." Talia studied her for a moment longer before nodding. "Very well. We'll give you a chance to prove yourselves. But know this, trust is earned, not given. You'll have to work hard to gain our confidence." James and Celine were escorted to the Resistance's main camp, a well-hidden enclave bustling with activity. The fighters there were a diverse group, united by their shared goal of overthrowing Varlin's regime. As they settled in, James and Celine began to integrate into the community, participating in training sessions and planning meetings. Over the next few weeks, James and Celine worked tirelessly to earn the trust of the resistance fighters. They joined in on raids against Varlin's supply lines, using their combined skills to gather valuable intelligence and disrupt the tyrant's operations. Their efforts began to pay off, slowly but surely winning over the resistance members. One evening, after a particularly successful mission, Talia called a meeting to discuss their next move. "We've gathered enough intel to make a significant strike against Varlin's forces," she announced. "But it will be dangerous. We'll need everyone's best efforts to pull it off." James and Celine volunteered immediately. "We're ready," James said. "Whatever it takes to bring Varlin down." The plan was set. They would infiltrate one of Varlin's major outposts, capturing key personnel and gathering critical data that could cripple his operations. The resistance fighters prepared meticulously, knowing that this mission could be a turning point in their fight. As the resistance fighters assembled for the mission, the atmosphere was tense but determined. James and Celine led a small team, each member selected for their unique skills and unwavering commitment to the cause. The infiltration would require precision, bravery, and trust in one another. They approached the outpost under the cover of night, using the dense forest to conceal their movements. The outpost was heavily fortified, but the resistance had carefully mapped out a route that would allow them to bypass the main defenses and enter undetected. James and Celine led the way, their movements synchronized and silent. The team followed closely, their senses heightened and ready for any sign of danger. As they reached the perimeter, they disabled the security systems and slipped inside, moving swiftly through the shadows. Their first objective was to locate and capture the outpost's commander, a man named Varys who was known for his loyalty to Varlin. They found him in his quarters, guarded by a handful of soldiers. A swift and silent takedown neutralized the guards, and Varys was subdued before he could raise the alarm. "Where are the main data terminals?" James demanded, holding Varys at gunpoint. Varys glared defiantly but eventually relented under pressure. "In the control room on the 3rd floor, he spat. "You'll never make it out alive." "We'll see about that," James replied, securing Varys before leading the team to the control room. The control room was their next target, and they moved quickly to secure it. As they entered, a fierce firefight erupted. The resistance fighters fought with determination and skill, eventually overpowering the guards and securing the area. Celine moved to the terminals, her fingers flying over the controls as she downloaded critical data and planted malware to disrupt the outpost systems. "Got it," Celine said, her voice steady despite the tension. "We need to move now." With the data secured, the team began their exfiltration. However, their actions had triggered an alarm, and the outpost was now on high alert. Guards flooded the corridors, and the resistance fighters found themselves in a desperate battle for survival. James and Celine fought side by side, their synergy and determination driving them forward. The resistance team moved with coordinated precision, cutting through the enemy forces as they made their way to the extraction point. The intense combat tested their limits, but their resolve never wavered. As they reached the forest edge, the extraction ship arrived just in time. They boarded swiftly, taking off and leaving the chaos of the outpost behind. The mission had been perilous, but they had succeeded in their objectives, dealing a significant blow to Varlin's operations. Back at the resistance camp, the team was met with cheers and relief. The data Celine had secured provided invaluable insights into Varlin's strategies and weaknesses. Talia, impressed by their success, addressed the gathered fighters. "Today we've struck a vital blow against Varlin's tyranny," she declared. "Thanks to James, Celine, and the brave fighters who risked their lives, we now have the means to turn the tide of this war." James and Celine stood together, their bond stronger than ever. They had faced incredible danger and emerged victorious, proving their worth to the resistance and to each other. Their journey was far from over, but with each victory they moved closer to freeing Cleria from Varlin's grip. As they looked out over the camp, filled with hope and determination, James and Selena knew that their love and their fight for justice would guide them through the challenges ahead. Together, they would continue to lead the resistance, united in their quest to bring about a brighter future for Cleria. With the success of their mission, James and Celine had earned the trust and respect of the resistance fighters. However, not everyone was convinced of their loyalty. Among the resistance was a man named Orin, who had lost his entire family to Varlin's ruthless regime. His deep-seated hatred for Varlin extended to Celine, making him suspicious of her intentions. One evening, as the resistance leaders gathered to review the data Celine had retrieved, Orin confronted James in private. His eyes were filled with anger and mistrust. "I don't care what she's done to help us," Orin spat. "She's still Varlin's daughter. How do we know she's not leading us into a trap?" James remained calm, meeting Oren's glare with steady resolve. Celine has risked everything to fight against her father. She's proven her loyalty to the Resistance and to our cause. We need to trust her. Oren shook his head. I can't. And I won't stand by and watch as you put our lives in her hands. Despite Oren's misgivings, the Resistance continued to plan their next major assault on Varlin's forces, utilizing the valuable intelligence they had gathered. The mission was ambitious, aiming to strike multiple key targets simultaneously and destabilize Varlin's grip on Cleria. As the preparations intensified, James and Celine were unaware that Oren's distrust had driven him to desperate measures. Convinced that Celine was a threat, Oren secretly contacted one of Varlin's lieutenants, offering to betray the Resistance in exchange for vengeance. On the night before the planned assault, Oren slipped away from the camp and met with Varlin's forces in a secluded location. He provided them with the Resistance's plans, believing he was ensuring their survival by eliminating what he saw as a traitor in their midst. The following day, as the Resistance fighters mobilized for the assault, James and Celine noticed Oren's absence but had no time to investigate. They led their team to their assigned target, unaware that Varlin's forces were lying in wait. As they approached the target, alarms suddenly blared, and Varlin's soldiers ambushed them from all sides. James realized too late that they had been betrayed. "Fall back," he shouted, trying to regroup the fighters. But the enemy was relentless, and the Resistance suffered heavy casualties. Celine fought fiercely, her powers and combat skills pushing her to her limits. Despite their best efforts, it became clear that they were outmatched. They had no choice but to retreat, abandoning their mission and barely escaping with their lives. Back at the camp, the survivors regrouped, their morale shattered. James's eyes blazed with anger and determination as he addressed the remaining fighters. "We were betrayed," he said, his voice low but fierce. "Oren is responsible. He put us all in danger because of his hatred and mistrust. We will find him, and we will make him pay." With their mission compromised and their ranks depleted, the Resistance was in a precarious position. James and Celine knew that they had to act quickly to prevent further damage and to restore the fighters' morale. They began to hunt for Oren, determined to bring him to justice and uncover the extent of his betrayal. Talia joined them in their search, her leadership crucial in maintaining the Resistance's unity and resolve. "We can't let this betrayal tear us apart," she said. "We need to show the fighters that we can still stand strong, even in the face of adversity." James, Celine, and Talia combed through the intelligence reports and interrogation records, piecing together clues about Oren's movements. They tracked him to a remote outpost on the outskirts of Varlin's territory, where he had taken refuge with a small contingent of loyalists. As they approached the outpost, James's anger simmered beneath the surface. He couldn't shake the image of the fallen Resistance fighters, the comrades they had lost due to Oren's treachery. Celine, sensing his turmoil, placed a hand on his arm. "We'll make him pay," she said softly, "but we need to stay focused. This is about more than just revenge." James nodded, drawing strength from her presence. "You're right, let's end this." They infiltrated the outpost under the cover of night, moving with the precision and determination that had defined their previous missions. The Loyalist guards were quickly subdued, and they made their way to the main building where Oren was hiding. Bursting into the room, they found Oren with a group of Varlin's soldiers. The look of shock on his face quickly turned to defiance. "You think you can just waltz in here and take me?" Oren sneered. "You're the traitors, not me. I did what I had to do to protect our people." James's fury boiled over. "You betrayed us, Oren. You got our people killed. There is no excuse for what you've done." A fierce battle erupted with James, Celine, and Talia fighting against Oren and the Loyalists. The room filled with the clash of weapons and the crackle of Celine's energy blasts. Despite their numerical disadvantage, the Resistance leaders fought with the desperation and determination of those who had everything to lose. James faced Oren in a brutal hand-to-hand fight. The betrayal and the loss of their comrades fueled his every move. As they grappled, Oren's bravado began to falter under James's relentless assault. With a final decisive blow, James incapacitated Oren, bringing the traitor to his knees. "It's over," James said, breathing heavily. "You will answer for your crimes." The Loyalists were subdued and the outpost was secured. They took Oren back to the Resistance camp, where he was imprisoned and awaited trial for his betrayal. The fighters, though still reeling from the ambush, began to regain their resolve. The capture of Orin served as a reminder of the importance of unity and trust. In the days that followed, the resistance regrouped and reinforced their security measures. James and Celine continued to lead with determination, their bond and shared purpose inspiring the fighters to stay the course. Talia addressed the camp, her voice filled with conviction. "We have faced betrayal and loss, but we are not defeated. We will continue to fight for our freedom and for the future of Cleria. Together, we are unstoppable." James and Celine stood together, their love and commitment unwavering. They knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but they were ready to face whatever came their way, united in their quest for justice and a brighter future for Cleria. With Orin's betrayal behind them and the resistance regrouped, James and Celine focused on strengthening their alliance and expanding their reach. The capture of Orin had been a turning point, and the fighters were more determined than ever to bring down Varlin's regime. News of the resistance's successes began to spread, and more people joined their cause. Villagers, former soldiers, and even some of Varlin's disillusioned officers defected to the resistance, swelling their ranks and bringing valuable skills and resources. One evening, as the leaders gathered to discuss their next steps, a young woman named Lyra approached them. She was a former officer in Varlin's army and had vital information about the tyrant's plans. "Varlin is planning a major offensive," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "He's mobilizing his forces for a full-scale attack on the resistance. If we don't act quickly, we'll be overwhelmed." Talia nodded, her expression grim. "We need to strike first. We can't let him gain the upper hand." James turned to Celine, his eyes filled with determination. "We need to gather all our allies and prepare for a coordinated assault. This is our chance to turn the tide." Over the next few weeks, the resistance leaders traveled across Cleria, rallying their supporters and forming alliances with other rebel groups. Their network grew stronger, and the fighters were united by a shared purpose and a vision of a free Cleria. During one of their missions, James and Celine infiltrated a heavily fortified outpost to sabotage Varlin's supply lines. The operation was risky, but their teamwork and determination saw them through. As they planted explosives and gathered intelligence, they felt the weight of their mission and the hope of their people. "We're making a difference," Celine said, her voice filled with conviction. "Every step we take brings us closer to freedom." James nodded, his resolve unwavering. "We won't stop until Varlin is defeated and Cleria is free." With their allies gathered and their forces prepared, the resistance launched a series of coordinated attacks on Varlin's strongholds. The battles were fierce and relentless, but the fighters were fueled by their determination and the knowledge that they were fighting for their future. James and Celine led their team in a critical assault on one of Varlin's main fortresses. The stronghold was heavily defended, but the resistance fighters moved with precision and purpose. They used the intelligence they'd gathered to exploit weaknesses in the defenses, making their way through the labyrinthine corridors. As they approached the command center, they encountered fierce resistance from Varlin's elite guards. The fight was intense, with blaster fire and energy blasts filling the air. James and Celine fought side by side, their movements synchronized and their bond unbreakable. "We're almost there," James shouted over the noise of the battle. "We need to take out the command center and disable their communications." Celine nodded, her eyes blazing with determination. "Let's finish this." With a final push, they breached the command center and disabled the communications array, cutting off Varlin's ability to coordinate his forces. The tide of the battle began to turn as the resistance fighters gained the upper hand. In the midst of the chaos, James confronted a high-ranking officer loyal to Varlin. The officer sneered at him, his eyes filled with contempt. "You think you can win? Varlin's power is absolute. You're nothing but a nuisance." James's eyes flashed with anger. "We're fighting for freedom and justice. Varlin's tyranny ends now." The fight was brutal, but James's determination and skill prevailed. As the officer fell, the remaining guards began to falter, their morale broken by the loss of their leader. The resistance fighters pressed their advantage, driving Varlin's forces back and securing the fortress. The victory was a significant blow to Varlin's regime, and it sent a powerful message to the people of Cleria. The resistance was strong, and they would not be defeated. As the dust settled and the fighters regrouped, Talia addressed the victorious resistance. "Today we have shown Varlin that his tyranny will not stand. We have struck a decisive blow, but our fight is not over. We will continue to push forward until Cleria is free." James and Celine stood together, their hearts filled with pride and determination. They had faced incredible challenges and had emerged stronger, their love and their commitment to the cause unshaken. In the days that followed, the resistance capitalized on their victory, launching additional attacks and rallying more supporters to their cause. The people of Cleria, inspired by the resistance's successes, began to rise up against Varlin's rule. The tide had turned, and the momentum was firmly on the side of the resistance. James and Celine knew that the final confrontation with Varlin was drawing near, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would continue to lead the fight for freedom, united in their love and their vision of a brighter future for Cleria. The battle was far from over, but they were prepared to see it through to the end, knowing that their efforts would shape the destiny of their world. With their recent victories bolstering their confidence, the resistance prepared for their most ambitious operation yet, a direct assault on Varlon's primary stronghold. Intelligence indicated that Varlin had consolidated his forces there, making it the linchpin of his power. Taking it down would deal a decisive blow to his regime. James and Celine, now leaders both respected and beloved by the resistance fighters, were at the forefront of the planning. The atmosphere in the resistance camp was charged with determination and anticipation. "We must strike hard and fast," Talia said during the strategy meeting. "Our goal is to capture Varlin and dismantle his command structure." James nodded. "We'll need to coordinate multiple teams for this, one to breach the outer defenses, another to disable the power grid, and a third to secure the command center." Celine added, "We've mapped out the stronghold's layout. With the element of surprise and our superior knowledge of its weaknesses, we have a real chance." The day of the assault dawned with an eerie calm. The resistance fighters moved into position under the cover of darkness, their resolve steeled by the knowledge of what was at stake. James and Celine led the main assault team, their hearts pounding with a mixture of anxiety and determination. As the first light of dawn broke, the resistance launched their attack. Explosions rocked the outer defenses and the fighters surged forward, engaging Varlin's forces in fierce combat. The air was filled with the sounds of battle blaster fire, shouted orders, and the clash of energy weapons. James's team fought their way to the power grid, neutralizing guards and placing charges to disable the stronghold's defenses. Meanwhile, Celine led a group to the command center, using her knowledge of the fortress's layout to outmaneuver their enemies. Inside the command center, Celine and her team encountered heavy resistance. Varlin's elite guards were well-trained and heavily armed, but the resistance fighters pressed on with unwavering determination. Celine's energy blasts cut through the ranks of the guards, clearing a path to the control room. As James's charges detonated, the fortress was plunged into darkness, and Varlin's forces were thrown into disarray. The resistance fighters used the confusion to their advantage, pushing deeper into the stronghold. In the heart of the command center, James and Celine finally confronted Varlon. The tyrant lord stood before them, his expression a mix of rage and contempt. "You dare challenge me in my own domain?" Varlin snarled. "You will pay for your insolence." James stepped forward, his eyes blazing with determination. "Your reign of terror ends today, Varlin. The people of Cleria will be free." Varlin unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, but James and Celine moved with a synchronized precision that reflected their deep bond and shared purpose. They fought with everything they had, their determination and love fueling their strength. The battle was intense, but Varlin's arrogance and overconfidence proved to be his downfall. With a final, powerful strike, James disarmed him, and Celine used her energy to immobilize him. "It's over, Varlin," Celine said, her voice filled with righteous fury. "You will never harm anyone again." With Varlin captured and his forces defeated, the resistance secured the stronghold. The people of Cleria, hearing of Varlin's downfall, began to celebrate and rally around the resistance. The oppressive regime that had ruled their lives for so long was finally crumbling. Back at the resistance camp, there was a mixture of relief, joy, and sorrow for the lives lost in the struggle. James and Celine, though exhausted, addressed the gathered fighters and supporters. "This victory belongs to all of us," James said, his voice carrying across the assembly. "We have fought and sacrificed for this moment, but our work is not done. We must rebuild and create a future where tyranny has no place." Celine continued, her eyes shining with hope. Today marks the beginning of a new era for Cleria. Together, we will build a world of justice, peace, and freedom. We owe it to those who have fallen and to the generations to come. The resistance leaders worked tirelessly to establish a new government, one based on the principles of democracy and equality. Talia took a prominent role in the Provisional Council, guiding the efforts to rebuild the shattered infrastructure and restore order. James and Celine, now regarded as heroes, were instrumental in these efforts. Their leadership and vision helped to unite the diverse factions within the resistance and ensure a smooth transition to a new, more just society. Despite the monumental tasks ahead, James and Celine found moments of peace and happiness in their personal lives. Their bond had only grown stronger through the trials they had faced together, and they took comfort in each other's presence. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through the bustling streets of the newly liberated capital, Celine looked up at James with a smile. "We've come so far, James. I can hardly believe it." James squeezed her hand gently. "We did it together, Celine, and we'll keep working together to make sure Cleria has the future it deserves." In the following months, the new government began to take shape. Elections were held, and the people of Cleria chose their leaders, finally having a voice in their own destiny. The transition was not without challenges, but the spirit of unity and determination that had carried them through the darkest times continued to guide them. As the first year of their newfound freedom came to a close, James and Celine stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The lights of the capital twinkled below, a testament to the resilience and hope of the Clerian people. "We've built something amazing here," Celine said softly. "And it's just the beginning." James nodded, his heart filled with pride and love. "Together we can face anything. The future is ours to shape." With Varlin's tyranny behind them and a bright future ahead, James and Celine knew that their journey was far from over. But they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their love and their commitment to building a better world for Cleria. With Varlin's defeat and the new government in place, Cleria entered a period of reconstruction and healing. The scars of the tyrant's rule were still visible, but the spirit of the people was unbroken. James and Celine, now key figures in the rebuilding efforts, worked tirelessly to restore their world. The Provisional Council, led by Talia, focused on addressing the immediate needs of the population, rebuilding infrastructure, restoring services, and providing aid to those affected by the conflict. James took charge of organizing the reconstruction teams, leveraging his military experience to coordinate efforts efficiently. Celine, on the other hand, dedicated herself to healing the emotional wounds of the people. She established centers for mental health and trauma support, drawing on her own experiences to offer solace and guidance. Her efforts were met with gratitude and admiration, as her resilience and compassion inspired many. One day, as James inspected a construction site in the heart of the capital, he was approached by an elderly man. "Captain Carter," the man said, his voice filled with emotion, "I want to thank you and Celine for everything you've done. My family is safe because of you." James shook the man's hand, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "We couldn't have done it without the support of the people. Together, we're building a better future." As the weeks passed, the fruits of their labor began to show. New buildings rose from the rubble, schools and hospitals reopened, and the markets buzzed with activity. The city that had once been a symbol of Varlin's oppression was now a beacon of hope and renewal. Despite the progress, there were still challenges to overcome. Remnants of Varlin's loyalists continued to pose a threat, conducting sporadic attacks to destabilize the new government. James and Celine knew that securing lasting peace required vigilance and continued effort. During a council meeting, Talia addressed the threat of the loyalists. "We must root out these remnants and bring them to justice. They cannot be allowed to undermine what we've achieved." James agreed. "We need to strengthen our security forces and ensure that the people feel safe. The loyalists thrive on fear and chaos. We must deny them that power." Celine proposed an initiative to integrate former soldiers into the new security forces, offering them a chance to serve their country honorably. Many of these men and women were forced to fight for Varlin out of fear. We can give them a choice to be part of something better. The council approved the initiative, and recruitment began immediately. The new security forces, composed of both seasoned fighters and fresh recruits, were trained to uphold the values of justice and equality that the new government stood for. As Cleria continued to rebuild and heal, the remnants of Varlin's loyalists became more desperate. They intensified their attacks, targeting key infrastructure and attempting to sow discord among the population. The new security forces, though well-trained, faced a formidable enemy that was cunning and ruthless. One evening, as James and Celine were discussing their next steps, they received an urgent message from Talia. "We've received intelligence about a planned attack on the central power grid. If they succeed, it could plunge the city into chaos." James and Celine immediately mobilized a response team. They coordinated with the security forces to secure the power grid and prevent the attack. The Loyalists, however, were prepared for a fight. The battle for the power grid was intense. The Loyalists had rigged explosives and set up ambushes, turning the site into a war zone. James and Celine led the charge, their presence bolstering the morale of the security forces. "Stay focused," James shouted over the sounds of gunfire and explosions. "We can't let them take the grid." Celine used her energy blasts to neutralize traps and disarm enemies, her determination unwavering. "We have to protect the city, for everyone's sake." As the battle raged on, it became clear that the Loyalists were not just trying to disable the power grid. They were making a final desperate stand. James and Celine fought with everything they had, their synergy and commitment driving them forward. In the midst of the chaos, James spotted the Loyalist leader, a man named Dravik, orchestrating the attack. Recognizing the importance of taking him down, James signaled to Celine, "There, we need to stop him." Together, they advanced towards Dravik, cutting through the enemy ranks. The Loyalist leader saw them coming and directed his forces to concentrate their fire on the couple. The firefight intensified, but James and Celine pressed on, their resolve unshaken. Finally, they confronted Dravik in a fierce showdown. The Loyalist leader fought with a fanaticism born of desperation, but he was no match for the combined strength of James and Celine. With a final, decisive strike, they incapacitated Dravik and secured the power grid. The Loyalists, seeing their leader defeated, began to retreat. The security forces quickly moved to secure the area and defuse the remaining explosives. The battle was over, and the city was safe once again. Back at the council, Talia praised their efforts. "You've done it again. Thanks to you, we've averted a disaster and dealt a significant blow to the Loyalists." James and Celine knew that the fight for Cleria's future was far from over, but they also knew that they had the strength and unity to overcome any challenge. Their love and commitment to each other and their people had carried them through the darkest times, and it would continue to guide them as they built a brighter future. As they stood together, looking out over the city they had saved, James took Celine's hand. "We've faced so much, but we've always come through it together. I'm ready for whatever comes next, as long as we're together." Celine smiled, her eyes filled with love and determination. "Together we can face anything. We've built something incredible here, and I know that the best is yet to come." With their hearts full of hope and their resolve unbreakable, James and Celine looked forward to the future, ready to continue their journey and shape the destiny of Cleria. The battle for freedom and justice was ongoing, but they were prepared to see it through, united in their love and their commitment to building a better world. As Cleria continued to rebuild and thrive under the new government, the threat from Varlin's Loyalists persisted. Despite the recent victory, the remnants of the Tyrant's forces regrouped and launched sporadic attacks, attempting to destabilize the new regime. James and Celine knew that a final confrontation was inevitable. Intelligence reports indicated that the Loyalists were planning a massive assault on the capital, aiming to decapitate the new government and plunge Cleria back into chaos. James, Celine, and Talia convened an emergency council meeting to address the imminent threat. "We need to strike at the heart of their operation before they can execute their plan," Talia said, her voice filled with urgency. "Our sources have identified their main base of operations. If we can take it out, we can end this once and for all." James nodded in agreement. "This is our chance to finish what we started, but it won't be easy. We'll need a full-scale assault and we'll have to be prepared for heavy resistance." Celine's eyes were resolute. "We've faced worse before. We can do this." The council approved the plan, and the resistance began preparing for the final battle. Every available fighter was mobilized, and resources were pooled to ensure the success of the mission. The atmosphere was tense but determined, as everyone knew that the fate of Cleria hung in the balance. On the eve of the assault, James and Celine shared a quiet moment together, reflecting on their journey and the challenges they had overcome. "We've come so far," James said, holding Celine close. "No matter what happens tomorrow, I want you to know that I love you." Celine's eyes glistened with emotion. "I love you too, James, and we'll face whatever comes together." The next day, the resistance forces launched their assault on the Loyalist base. The battle was fierce and chaotic, with explosions and gunfire echoing through the air. James and Celine led the charge, their presence inspiring the fighters around them. As they fought their way through the Loyalist defenses, it became clear that the enemy was prepared to make a final stand. The Loyalists had fortified their positions and were determined to hold their ground at all costs. In the heart of the Loyalist base, James and Celine encountered Dravik, the Loyalist leader they had previously defeated. He had regrouped and was now more dangerous than ever. The confrontation was intense, with Dravik unleashing all his fury and power against them. During the battle, Dravik managed to activate a self-destruct mechanism within the base, intending to take everyone down with him. The countdown began, and panic spread through the ranks of both the Loyalists and the Resistance. "We have to stop it," James shouted, realizing the dire situation. "Celine, we need to find the control room and shut it down." Celine nodded, her determination unwavering. "Let's go." As they raced against time, they fought their way through the chaotic corridors of the base. Finally, they reached the control room, but the situation was dire. The mechanism was complex, and disarming it required precise coordination. "We need to work together," Celine said, her voice calm despite the urgency. "I'll guide you through the process." James followed Celine's instructions, their teamwork and trust evident in every move. With seconds to spare, they managed to disable the self-destruct mechanism, averting disaster and saving countless lives. Exhausted but victorious, they returned to the resistance forces, who cheered their leader's bravery and quick thinking. Dravik and his remaining Loyalists were captured, and the threat of Varlin's regime was finally extinguished. With the Loyalist threat eliminated, Cleria entered a new era of peace and prosperity. The people, inspired by the bravery and determination of the resistance, came together to rebuild their world and create a society based on justice and equality. James and Celine were hailed as heroes, their leadership and sacrifice becoming the cornerstone of Cleria's new beginning. The Provisional Council transitioned to a permanent government, with representatives elected by the people to ensure that every voice was heard. As life returned to normal, James and Celine found themselves with time to reflect on their journey. They had faced incredible challenges and made immense sacrifices, but their love and commitment to each other and their people had seen them through. One evening, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the bustling capital, Celine turned to James with a smile. "We did it. Cleria is finally free." James wrapped his arms around her, his heart filled with pride and love. "We did it together, and this is just the beginning." Their bond, forged in the fires of conflict and tempered by their shared vision for a better future, remained as strong as ever. They knew that there would always be challenges to face, but they were ready to meet them head-on, united in their love and their commitment to building a brighter future for Cleria. As the sun set over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city, James and Celine looked forward to the new dawn with hope and determination. They had created a legacy that would endure for generations, a testament to the power of love, unity, and the unbreakable bond between two people who had fought for freedom and justice. Together, they would continue to lead and inspire, guiding Cleria into a future filled with promise and possibility. The battle for their world was over, but their journey was far from finished. With their hearts full of hope and their spirits unbroken, they faced the future with confidence, ready to embrace whatever came their way. And so, under the stars of a free Cleria, James and Celine stood hand in hand, ready to shape the destiny of their world and build a legacy of peace, love, and enduring strength.